Captain Lee Daho stood on the bridge of his freight ship watching the stars through the wide window. The Persistent Dawn was not a beautiful ship. It was built for work, not for show. Like everything humans made, it was simple and strong. Lee had been flying this route for 15 years, carrying supplies from one alien world to another. His crew moved around him quietly. They checked systems, loaded cargo, and fixed broken things. This was what humans did in the galaxy. They were the workers. They were the ones who kept everything running while the aliens made the big decisions. The Vorthak thought they were smart because their bodies were made of living crystal. They could think very fast and solve hard math problems, but they could not fix a broken engine or grow food on a dead planet. The Nebulon Collective floated through space as clouds of smart gas. They could see things humans could not see and talk without making sounds, but they could not build a house or repair a computer. The Kresh Empire worked together like a giant brain made of millions of bugs. They could plan wars and move armies across the galaxy, but they could not cook a meal or clean a room, so the aliens used humans for these things. They said humans were good at simple work. They said humans were too slow to understand the important things. They gave humans jobs and told them where to live and what to do. Most humans seemed happy with this. They worked hard and did not complain, but Lee knew better. He touched the small device hidden under his control panel. A message was waiting for him. The message looked like a normal shipping order, but Lee knew how to read the real words hidden inside. The message was from Admiral Song Hiram. It said, "The garden is ready for harvest." Lee felt his heart beat faster. After 30 years of waiting, it was finally time. On the planet below, Dr. Park Minji walked through the research station where she worked. The Vorthak scientists around her glowed with different colors as they thought about their experiments. They were studying human DNA, trying to understand why humans were so different from other species. "Dr. Park," said the lead scientist, his crystal body flashing blue with curiosity. "We still do not understand how humans can work in so many different environments. Your people can live on ice worlds and desert planets. You can breathe different kinds of air and eat almost anything. Most species can only survive on worlds very similar to their home planet." Minji nodded and smiled. "We are very adaptable," she said. It was true, but not for the reasons the Vorthak thought. They believed humans were just lucky. They did not know that humans had been changing themselves for hundreds of years. While the aliens looked down on human science as simple and basic, humans had been quietly making themselves stronger, smarter, and more flexible. "Yes, very useful," the Vorthak scientist said. "That is why your people are so good at maintaining our colonies. You can work anywhere." Minji typed notes into her computer, but she was really recording everything she learned about Vorthak technology. She had been doing this for 10 years. She knew how their ships worked, how their weapons functioned, and most importantly, how to break them. Every human working in alien research stations was doing the same thing. They gathered information and sent it home in ways the aliens never noticed. Her hidden communicator buzzed softly. The message was short. "The garden is ready for harvest." Minji's hands did not shake as she continued her work, but her mind was racing. Everything was about to change. Far away on the coalition capital world, Ambassador Kim Tae-min sat in a meeting with the alien leaders. The meeting room was enormous, built to hold creatures of many different shapes and sizes. The Vorthak delegates stood like living statues of colored glass. The Nebulon representatives floated as shimmering clouds near the ceiling. The Kresh spoke through a cluster of small creatures that moved together like one person. "The humans have been very helpful this year," said the Vorthak leader. "Ship construction is ahead of schedule on all projects. The mining operations on the outer worlds are producing more materials than ever," added the Nebulon cloud. "Human workers are very efficient." Taemin nodded politely. "My people are proud to serve the coalition," he said. The words tasted bitter in his mouth, but he had been saying them for years. The aliens believed him because they wanted to believe him. They thought humans were naturally obedient. "There is one concern," said the Kresh cluster. "Some of our monitoring systems have detected unusual communication patterns between human work groups. Nothing dangerous, but different from normal." Taemin kept his face calm. "Humans like to talk to each other," he said. "We are social creatures. Perhaps the patterns you detected are just workers sharing stories or planning family visits." The aliens accepted this explanation because it matched what they thought they knew about humans, simple creatures with simple needs. They could not imagine that humans might be planning something they could not understand. After the meeting, Taman returned to his office. He checked his messages and found the one he had been waiting for. The garden is ready for harvest. He looked out his window at the alien city below. In a few hours, it would be very different. Admiral Song Hyerim stood in a room that did not officially exist. It was hidden deep inside an asteroid that was supposed to be empty. Around her, dozens of screens showed human work crews across the galaxy. To anyone watching, they looked like normal workers doing normal jobs. But Hyerim could see the truth. Every human in the galaxy was in position. They had been preparing for this moment for decades. While the aliens thought humans were just fixing their machines and growing their food, humans had been building something much more important. They had been building a network. Every human worker was connected to every other human worker. They shared information instantly across thousands of light years. They had learned every secret the aliens thought they were keeping. They had studied every weakness in alien technology and society. Most importantly, they had been preparing to leave. Hyerim looked at the time. In 6 hours, the alien worlds would wake up to find that every human had disappeared. No warning, no explanation, no trace of where they had gone. The aliens would search, but they would find nothing. Humans had been planning this evacuation for longer than some alien species had been alive. She pressed a button on her control panel. Across the galaxy, hidden transmitters sent out a single coded message. The garden is ready for harvest. On every world, in every station, in every ship, humans began to move. They finished their current tasks because they took pride in their work. They left their tools clean and organized because that was the human way. But then they walked away from jobs they had been doing for generations. They boarded ships the aliens had never seen. Ships that had been built in hidden factories using technology the aliens did not know existed. Ships that could travel through space in ways that would make alien scientists' minds break trying to understand them. Lee Daeho was among the last to leave. He stood on his bridge one final time, looking at the alien space station where he had delivered cargo for so many years. The station was full of aliens who still did not know what was happening. In a few hours, they would try to call for human help with a broken machine or a failed system, but no one would answer. He activated his ship's new engines, and the persistent dawn vanished from normal space, leaving only empty vacuum where it had been. All across the galaxy, the same thing was happening. Humans were disappearing without a sound, without a fight, without a word of explanation. They were going to a place the aliens could not follow, to begin a new chapter in the story of what it meant to be human. The garden was being harvested, and the gardeners were finally going home. The alarm woke Counselor Zektar from his crystal meditation. His body flashed red with annoyance as he connected to the station's communication system. As a Vorthak military leader, he was used to problems, but this one made no sense. "Report," he commanded, his voice creating musical tones that other Vorthak could understand. "Sir, we have lost contact with the human work crew on mining platform 7, came the reply. "They were supposed to report 6 hours ago." Zektar's crystal body shifted to orange, showing confusion. "Send a security team to check on them." "We already did, sir. The platform is empty. All the humans are gone, but their tools are still there. The mining equipment is still running." This was strange. Humans never left their work unfinished. They were known for being reliable, even if they were not very smart. Zektar decided to investigate personally. When he arrived at the mining platform, everything looked normal except for one thing. There were no humans anywhere. Their workstations were clean and organized, their tools were arranged neatly, the mining robots were still digging, following the last commands they had been given. But the humans who always watched over everything were simply gone. "Check the other platforms," Zektar ordered. The reports came back quickly. Every mining operation in the system was the same. No humans, but no signs of struggle or emergency. It was as if they had just decided to stop existing. Across the galaxy, similar reports were coming in. Hive Node Primesh of the Kresh Empire received news that all human workers on their construction projects had vanished. The giant space station they were building was half finished, with human tools still floating in zero gravity where they had been left. Primesh communicated with the other nodes of the hive mind. They had never experienced anything like this. The creche could understand when workers died or when they rebelled, but they could not understand workers who simply disappeared without explanation. "Search for them," Primesh commanded through the hive network. "They must be somewhere." But the searches found nothing. It was as if every human in creche space had never existed at all. The first real problems started 3 days later. On the Vorthak homeworld, the atmospheric processors began making strange noises. These machines cleaned the air and kept the planet comfortable for crystal-based life forms. They had been working perfectly for over a century, maintained by human technicians who seemed to understand them better than anyone else. Engineer Bei Jinho was one of the few humans who had not disappeared. He had volunteered to stay behind to watch what would happen. The aliens did not know he was working for the human resistance. They thought he was just a loyal worker who had been left behind by accident. Jinho walked through the atmospheric processing center with a team of Vorthak engineers. They were trying to figure out why the machines were failing. "The primary filtration system is operating outside normal parameters," said one of the Vorthak, his body flashing yellow with worry. "We cannot determine the cause." Jinho looked at the readings and knew exactly what was wrong. The humans had not just operated these machines, they had quietly modified them over the years. The modifications were so subtle that the aliens had never noticed them. But now, without human maintenance, the modifications were causing the systems to slowly break down. "Perhaps if we reset the main control matrix?" suggested another Vorthak. "That might work," Jinho said, knowing it would only make things worse. He watched as the aliens tried solution after solution, none of which addressed the real problem. They did not understand that humans had been keeping their civilization running in ways they had never imagined. 2 weeks after the human disappearance, the hyperspace lanes began to act strangely. Ships that should have taken days to travel between systems were taking weeks. Some ships were arriving at completely wrong destinations. Others were not arriving at all. The Nebulon Collective tried to solve the problem using their advanced understanding of space and time. They could see dimensions that other species could not see. They could calculate the movements of stars and predict the behavior of black holes. But they could not figure out why their hyperspace navigation was failing. What they did not know was that human navigators had been making tiny adjustments to hyperspace beacons for generations. Humans seemed to have an intuitive understanding of quantum fluctuations that even the smartest aliens could not match. Without these constant small corrections, the entire galactic transportation network was falling apart. 1 month after the humans vanished, the problems became impossible to ignore. On the agricultural worlds, the crops were dying. The alien farmers had always relied on human workers to maintain the delicate balance of nutrients and water that kept food growing. The aliens knew the basic science of farming, but humans understood something deeper about how plants and soil and weather worked together. Food shortages began on dozens of worlds. The aliens had never learned to farm without human help because they had never needed to. They had assumed that human farming methods were simple and easy to copy. Now they were discovering how wrong they had been. The terraforming projects were failing even faster. Entire planets that had taken centuries to make livable were becoming hostile to life again. The aliens realized that humans had been maintaining the atmospheric balance, the water cycles, and the ecosystem stability of hundreds of worlds. Without human caretakers, these worlds were returning to their natural, uninhabitable states. Panic began to spread through the coalition government. Emergency meetings were called. The greatest alien minds worked together to solve the crisis. But they could not solve problems they did not understand, and they were beginning to realize they had understood very little about how their civilization actually functioned. "How could this happen?" demanded the Vorthak High Counselor. "They were just workers, simple laborers. How could losing them cause so much damage?" No one had a good answer. The aliens had been so sure that humans were the least important species in the coalition. They had given humans the boring jobs, the simple tasks, the work that seemed beneath the notice of truly intelligent beings. Now they were learning that those boring, simple jobs had been the foundation that held everything together. Jinho watched the alien leaders argue and blame each other. He could have told them how to fix some of the problems. He knew which systems needed human attention and which modifications his people had made over the years. But his orders were clear. He was only supposed to observe and report back to the hidden human fleet. As the weeks passed, the situation grew worse. Ships were stranded in space when their life support systems failed. Space stations were being abandoned as their reactors became unstable. Some alien species were beginning to fight each other, blaming their neighbors for the crisis. The coalition that had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years was falling apart, and they still had no idea where the humans had gone or why they had left. They only knew that the quiet, simple workers they had taken for granted had somehow been the most important people in their civilization. 6 months after the Great Disappearance, as alien worlds grew dark and cold and empty, some of the smarter aliens began to suspect a terrible truth. Maybe humans had not been simple workers at all. Maybe they had been something else entirely, and the aliens had been too proud and too blind to see it. But by then, it was far too late to apologize for their mistakes. 2 years had passed since the humans disappeared, and the coalition was dying. Fleet Admiral Cho Seung-jae stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Infinite Dawn, watching the destruction through screens that showed dozens of alien worlds. His ship was hidden in a place between dimensions, invisible to any alien technology. Around him, his crew worked quietly at stations filled with technology that would have amazed the greatest alien scientists. The ship itself was larger than most alien space stations, but it moved through space without making any disturbance that sensors could detect. It was built using principles that humans had discovered, while the aliens thought they were just fixing broken machines. Status report, Cho said to his communications officer. 40% of coalition industrial capacity is gone, Lieutenant Park Sun-ho replied. 60% of their defensive systems have failed. 3 entire star systems have been abandoned. The Vorthak homeworld is requesting emergency food supplies, but there are no cargo ships available to deliver them. Cho nodded grimly. The reports matched what human observers throughout the galaxy were telling them. The aliens were suffering exactly as humans had predicted they would. Every broken machine, every failed crop, every dying world was the result of losing something the aliens had never understood they possessed. Dr. Yoon Sora approached Cho with a data pad in her hands. She was the chief of human technological development, and her work over the past 2 years had produced miracles that even other humans found hard to believe. The new defensive systems are ready, she said. If the aliens try to attack us when we reveal ourselves, they will find that their weapons cannot touch us. And our response capabilities... She paused. Let me just say that we could end this conflict in minutes if we chose to. Cho took the data pad and reviewed the technical specifications. The numbers were almost frightening. Humans had not just advanced beyond alien technology, they had advanced beyond what most people thought was possible. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions at once, weapons that could rewrite matter at the quantum level, defenses that bent space and time around them like armor. Are you certain we should reveal this much? Cho asked. Once they see what we have become, there will be no going back to the old relationship. Dr. Yoon smiled sadly. Admiral, there was never going to be a way back. We tried for 300 years to be their partners. They chose to see us as their servants instead. Now they will learn the difference between those two things. General Nam Junho joined them on the bridge. He was in charge of military intelligence, and his people had been watching the aliens very carefully during the 2 years of collapse. The Coalition Council is meeting in emergency session, he reported. They are planning to send search fleets to find us. They believe that if they can force us to return, they can make everything go back to the way it was. Cho felt a mixture of sadness and anger. Even now, facing the destruction of their civilization, the aliens still thought they could command humans like property. They had learned nothing from their suffering. Then it is time, Cho said. Begin transmission on all coalition frequencies. Across the galaxy, on every alien world and station and ship, communication systems suddenly activated. Aliens stopped their desperate work trying to save their failing civilization and stared at screens that showed the bridge of a ship unlike anything they had ever seen. Admiral Cho Seung-jae appeared before them, wearing a uniform that was clearly human but somehow different from the simple work clothes they remembered humans wearing. Behind him, other humans worked at control stations that glowed with unfamiliar energy patterns. Citizens of the Coalition, Cho began, his voice calm but carrying a weight that made every alien listener feel small. "I am Fleet Admiral Cho Sung-jae of the Human Star Nation. We speak to you now from beyond the reach of your sensors, your weapons, and your understanding. On Vorthak worlds, crystal bodies flashed with colors of shock and disbelief. The Nebulon Collective swirled in patterns of confusion. Kresh hive minds buzzed with desperate attempts to understand what they were seeing. For 3 centuries, we served you faithfully," Cho continued. "We maintained your machines, grew your food, built your cities, and kept your civilization functioning. We did this not because we were incapable of greater things, but because we believed in cooperation between species. We hoped that service, freely given, would lead to partnership and respect." Dr. Yoon Sora stepped into view, and the background behind her changed to show glimpses of human technology. Ships that seemed to be made of living light. Weapons that looked like they could tear holes in reality itself. Cities that floated in space without any visible means of support. "Instead, you chose to see our willingness to help as proof that we were inferior," she said. "You mistook our kindness for weakness. You confused our cooperation with subservience. You believed that because we were content to work with our hands, we could not work with our minds." The images behind her showed more human achievements. Factories that built materials by arranging individual atoms. Gardens that grew in the empty vacuum of space. Computers that solved problems by thinking in 11 dimensions. While you debated philosophy and politics, we studied the fundamental nature of reality, Dr. Yoon continued. While you competed for status and power, we learned to reshape matter and energy according to our will. While you congratulated yourselves on your intelligence, we became something you never imagined we could be. Admiral Cho stepped forward again. "We offered you partnership. You gave us chains. We sought harmony. You provided condescension. We built your civilization with our own hands, and you told us we were too simple to understand the important things." The transmission paused, and for a moment, aliens across the galaxy hoped that this was all some kind of mistake, some misunderstanding that could be fixed with the right words. "We depart silently, not in defeat, but in disappointment," Cho said. "Finally, we declare judgment not from malice but from justice. Your arrogance has blinded you to a simple truth that even children understand. Those who fix can also break. Those who build can also destroy. Those who serve by choice can also choose to stop." General Nam Junho appeared beside the Admiral. Behind him, tactical displays showed the positions of human fleets that surrounded every major coalition world. The aliens could not see these fleets, but the displays made it clear they were there. "You have 1 year," Nam said. "Prove that you can maintain the civilization we built for you. Prove that you can live without the servants you took for granted. Prove that your intelligence is more than just pride and empty words." The Admiral raised his hand, and coordinates appeared on every screen. "When the year ends, we will return to these coordinates. If you have learned to survive without us, we will depart to the far reaches of space and trouble you no more. If you have not," he paused, "then you will discover that 3 centuries of faithful service taught us everything we needed to know about how to unmake what we made." Dr. Yoon spoke once more. "Remember that we could have left without warning you. We could have allowed your civilization to collapse without giving you a chance to save yourselves. We offer you this year because, despite everything, we still hope you might learn to be better than you have been." The transmission ended, leaving aliens across the galaxy staring at blank screens. In the silence that followed, they began to understand something that terrified them more than any weapon or threat. The humans had not been their servants at all. They had been their caretakers, their teachers, their guardians. And now, for the first time in 3 centuries, the children were truly alone. The Coalition had 1 year to prove they deserved to survive. Looking at their dying worlds and failing systems, most of them were not sure they could do it. The year had passed, and the Coalition had failed completely. Captain Oh Min-seok watched from his invisible ship as the alien fleets gathered at the coordinates humans had given them. Millions of warships from across the galaxy formed the largest military force in known history. The aliens had spent their final year not learning to survive without humans, but preparing for war. Min-seok's reconnaissance vessel existed partially outside normal space-time, allowing him to observe everything while remaining completely undetected, Around him, his crew monitored alien communications and weapon systems. What they heard made them shake their heads in amazement at alien stupidity. "They still think we are hiding on some primitive planet," reported Communications Officer Han. "Jamin, their battle plans assume we have basic weapons and simple defenses. They believe they can overwhelm us with numbers." Minsok studied the tactical displays showing the alien fleet positions. The Vorthak had brought their crystal dreadnoughts, ships as large as cities that could shatter planets with focused energy beams. The Nebulon Collective had assembled their cloud ships, vessels that could phase through solid matter and strike from unexpected angles. The Kresh Empire had sent their bioships, living vessels that could repair themselves and adapt to any weapon used against them. Any species that can build ships like these should have been able to keep their civilization running, Minseok said quietly. Instead, they chose to depend on us for everything important, then blame us when their dependence became a weakness. Scientist Kang Yunji looked up from her research station. For the past year, she had been developing weapons specifically designed to counter each alien species' strengths. She understood alien psychology better than the aliens understood themselves. "They are products of their own arrogance," she said. "The Vorthak believe their crystal bodies make them superior to organic life. The Nebulon think their gas forms make them untouchable. The Kresh trust their hive mind to solve any problem. They have never learned to question their own assumptions." On the flagship of the alien fleet, Coalition Supreme Commander Veltar of the Vorthak Empire addressed his forces. His crystal body blazed with confidence as he spoke to representatives of all Coalition species. "Today we reclaim our servants," he declared. "The humans think they can threaten us with their primitive tricks, but we are the masters of this galaxy. We will find their hiding places, destroy their weapons, and bring them back to serve us as they were meant to do." The alien fleet began to move toward the coordinates, sensors scanning for any sign of human presence. They expected to find a few hidden colonies, maybe some converted asteroids where humans had been hiding. They were prepared to fight a desperate resistance movement armed with stolen technology. Instead, they found empty space. No planets, no stations, no ships they could detect. Just the cold darkness between stars. "Begin deep scans," ordered Veltar. "They must be using some kind of cloaking technology." The alien sensors swept through the area looking for heat signatures, energy readings, or gravitational disturbances. They found nothing. According to every instrument the aliens possessed, they were alone in empty space. That was when Commander Shin Yun-woo decided to announce the human presence. His time distortion fleet materialized around the alien armada, appearing from dimensions the aliens could not access. The human ships looked like nothing the Coalition had ever seen. Sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around them, their hulls inscribed with patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves," Veltar commanded, though his crystal body was already shifting to yellow with nervousness. The human ships had appeared without triggering a single alarm or sensor warning. Shin's voice came over all Coalition communication channels. "I am Commander Shin Hyunwoo of the Human Temporal Fleet. You have one chance to withdraw peacefully. Leave now, and we will pretend this misunderstanding never happened." Veltar's body flashed red with anger. "You dare threaten us? We outnumber. You 1,000 to 1. Surrender now, and we may allow some of you to live as slaves." "So be it," Shin replied. "You have chosen your fate." The Coalition fleet opened fire simultaneously. Millions of energy beams, plasma bolts, and exotic weapons erupted across space in a display that could have been seen from neighboring galaxies. The firepower was enough to destroy entire solar systems, but none of it reached the human ships. As the weapons approached their targets, time itself began to slow around them. The deadly energy beams became harmless light shows, crawling through space so slowly that they would take years to travel a few meters. The aliens watched in growing horror as their ultimate weapons became beautiful but useless streams of colored light. "Impossible," whispered Veltar. "They are manipulating time itself." Captain Oh Min-seok chose that moment to reveal his reconnaissance fleet. Dozens of ships materialized throughout the alien formation, having been watching from close range without being detected. The aliens realized that humans had been among them the entire time, invisible and untouchable. "Your first lesson in humility," Min-seok announced. While you were planning this attack, we were already here, studying your every move. Your security, your tactics, your technology. All of it is an open book to us. Scientist Kang Yunji activated her specialized weapons systems. Against the Vorthak, she deployed harmonic disruptors that sent precise vibrations through space. The crystal hulls of their ships began to crack and shatter as the frequencies targeted the exact resonance points of their molecular structure. For the Nebulon Collective, she had created pressure bombs that compressed their gas-form bodies into tiny, dense spheres. The cloud ships suddenly collapsed inward, their crews trapped in forms too small to think or act. The Kresh Empire faced biological viruses designed to attack their hive-mind connections. The viruses spread confusion and fear through their mental network, turning their greatest strength into a weakness as panic cascaded from one ship to another. "How?" demanded Veltar as his flagship began to break apart around him. "How do you know our weaknesses so perfectly?" "We maintained your technology for 3 centuries," replied Dr. Kang over the communications channel. "We repaired your ships, analyzed your materials, studied your biology. Every time you brought us a broken machine, you gave us another piece of understanding about how you function. Did you think we were just mindlessly following repair manuals?" The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than an hour. The greatest military force in galactic history was systematically disabled by a human fleet 1% its size. Ships that had seemed invincible were reduced to floating debris. Crews that had boasted of their superiority found themselves helpless and defeated. As the last alien weapons fell silent, Admiral Cho Sung-jae's flagship emerged from hyperspace. The massive vessel dwarfed even the largest coalition dreadnoughts, and its arrival sent waves of energy through space that made alien sensors scream warnings about impossible power readings. "Citizens of the coalition," Cho's voice echoed across the battlefield. "You were given 1 year to prove you could survive without us. Instead, you chose to prepare for war. You decided that conquest was easier than competence, that force was simpler than learning to take care of yourselves." He paused, looking out at the wreckage of the alien fleet. "You have seen what happens when servants become enemies. Tomorrow, you will learn what happens when gardeners decide their garden needs to be replanted." The human fleet began to withdraw, leaving the aliens floating helplessly in space. Rescue ships would eventually come for the survivors, but the coalition's military power was broken forever. As they drifted in the darkness, the alien commanders finally understood the truth they had been too proud to see. Humans had never been their servants at all. They had been gods, choosing to live quietly among their creations, and gods, once angered, did not forgive easily. Admiral Lee So-young stood in the command center of the human flagship Eternal Judgment, watching displays that showed every major world in coalition space. Around her, technicians worked at stations that controlled forces beyond anything the aliens had ever imagined. The time for mercy had ended. The time for judgment had begun. "Dr. Jang, begin Project Genesis Reverse," she commanded. Dr. Jang Tai-hyun nodded grimly from his position at the stellar engineering console. For 3 centuries, humans had quietly modified the fundamental structure of coalition worlds. They had not just terraformed planets, they had rewritten the basic laws of physics that held those worlds together. Now it was time to undo that work. The first planet to change was Vorthak Prime, homeworld of the crystal beings who had called themselves the Masters of the Galaxy. Deep beneath its surface, quantum stabilizers that humans had installed centuries ago began to shut down. These devices had been maintaining the planet's unusual magnetic field, the field that allowed Vorthak crystal life to exist. On the surface, Counselor Zektar felt his body begin to vibrate strangely. Around him, other Vorthak were experiencing the same thing. Their crystal forms, which had been stable for millions of years, were starting to lose coherence. "What is happening?" he demanded, but his voice was already becoming distorted as his crystal structure began to break down. Across the planet, billions of Vorthak watched in horror as their bodies started to crack and dissolve. The quantum field that held their molecular structure together was disappearing. Within hours, the most arrogant species in the galaxy had been reduced to piles of glittering dust scattered across a world that could no longer support their form of life. Admiral Lee watched the reports come in without emotion. Proceed to the Nebulon systems, she ordered. The Nebulon Collective had always prided themselves on being creatures of pure thought, gas beings who could exist in the vacuum of space itself. What they did not know was that humans had been maintaining artificial pressure fields around their worlds for generations. These fields kept the Nebulon gas forms from dispersing into the emptiness of space. Dr. Jang activated the shutdown sequence for the Nebulon systems. On 17 worlds, invisible barriers that had protected gas-based life for centuries simply stopped working. The Nebulan beings tried to hold themselves together through will alone, but physics was stronger than consciousness. In minutes, trillions of intelligent gas creatures were scattered across the cosmos as individual molecules, their thoughts lost forever in the vastness of space. The Nebulon Collective, which had believed itself immortal, ceased to exist in less time than it takes. To boil water. The Kresh Empire next, Admiral Lee said quietly. The Kresh had been so proud of their hive mind, their ability to think and act as one massive organism spread across dozens of worlds. They had never realized that their mental connections depended on biotechnology that humans had given them centuries ago. Humans had told them it was just improved communication equipment. The Kresh had never bothered to understand how it actually worked. When Dr. Jang shut down the bio network, the effect was immediate and catastrophic. Billions of Kresh creatures suddenly found themselves alone in their own minds for the first time in their evolutionary history. The shock was so great that most of them simply stopped functioning. Those who survived went insane from the isolation. Within days, the Kresh Empire had collapsed from the inside. Without their hive mind to coordinate them, the individual Kresh could not even remember how to feed themselves or operate their own technology. Captain Ryu Jiwon, commander of the final evacuation fleet, watched the destruction from her ship at the edge of Coalition space. Her vessels were loaded with the last human observers who had remained behind to witness the end of the civilization they had built and maintained for so long. "It's hard to watch," said her second officer, Lieutenant Kim Min-yun. "Even after everything they did to us, seeing entire species die feels wrong." Ryu nodded sadly. "It does. But remember that we offered them chances to change. We served them faithfully for 3 centuries, hoping they would learn to see us as equals. We left quietly, hoping they would learn to take care of themselves. We warned them what would happen if they chose war instead of wisdom. They made their choice." The final phase of Project Genesis Reverse began as Dr. Jang targeted the space stations and artificial habitats scattered throughout Coalition space. These structures had been built using human engineering techniques that worked by bending the laws of physics in subtle ways. When humans removed their modifications, the stations simply stopped being able to exist in normal space-time. Massive orbital cities phased out of reality like bad dreams. Space elevators that had connected planets to their moons collapsed into nothingness. Ring worlds that housed billions of beings folded in on themselves and disappeared, taking their inhabitants with them. The hyperspace network that connected the galaxy went dark as human-built quantum beacons shut down. Without these, beacons faster-than-light travel became impossible. The few alien survivors found themselves trapped on whatever worlds they happened to be on when the network failed. But the most devastating change was happening to the star systems themselves. For centuries, humans had been secretly stabilizing the fusion reactions in hundreds of stars that were naturally unstable. They had done this to provide steady energy for the worlds that orbited those stars. Now, with human intervention removed, the stars began to behave according to their natural patterns. Some stars grew dim and cold, leaving their planets frozen and lifeless. Others flared up and burned their worlds to ash. A few collapsed into black holes that swallowed everything in their systems. The very suns that had provided light and warmth to coalition worlds for generations became agents of destruction. Admiral Lee received the final reports from her monitoring stations. Of the thousands of worlds that had made up the coalition, only a handful still supported life. The rest were empty ruins floating in space, monuments to the hubris of species who had forgotten that their civilization existed only because others had built it for them. "Broadcast the final message," she ordered. Captain Ryu's voice went out on every remaining communication channel in the galaxy. Her words were heard by the scattered survivors hiding in bunkers and emergency shelters. the few aliens who had lived through the collapse of everything they had known. "People of the former coalition," Ryu said, her voice carrying both sadness and finality. "You declared us your servants, and we served faithfully. You treated our service as proof of our inferiority, and we continued to serve anyway. You depended on us for everything that mattered in your lives, and still you look down on us as simple laborers." She paused, looking out at the dark ruins of what had once been the greatest civilization in the galaxy. "We leave you now to face the universe with the same wisdom and competence you showed us. You believed you were our masters because we chose to help you. Now you will learn what it means to survive without the gods you mistook for servants." The HFY human fleets began to phase out of normal space, moving to dimensions that alien science had never discovered. They were departing for new galaxies, new opportunities, new chances to build something better than what they were leaving behind. As the last human ship prepared to leave, Admiral Lee stood before a memorial wall that listed the names of every human who had died serving the Coalition over 3 centuries. They had died in accidents, in alien wars, in disasters both natural and artificial. They had given their lives to maintain a civilization that had never valued their sacrifice. "It's finished," she said quietly. "The garden is cleared. The ungrateful children are on their own." The human fleet vanished, leaving behind only empty space where their massive ships had been. In the ruins of Coalition worlds, a few alien survivors would eventually gather to tell their children stories of the humans, not as the servants they had appeared to be, but as the guardians they had actually been. And in the empty spaces between, dead stars, monuments appeared that had not been there before. Each one carried the same message in every alien language that had ever existed. Here dwelt a species that mistook kindness for weakness. They learned too late that those who build can also destroy, and those who give life can also take it away. Remember this lesson, whatever comes after. The humans were gone, but their final teaching would echo through the galaxy forever. A warning to any future civilization about the price of taking miracles for granted.